When we arrive in Kuty, an ancient town on the Cheremosh River in Hutzulshina, from the locals we constantly hear, alongside the old history of their land, about the famous Polish writer Tadeusz Mostowicz. Did you know, they say, that Mostowicz spent the last days of his life in Kuty? It was here that he died. Kuty is part of the Hutzul region, and for many centuries, the Hutzuls have lived side by side with various nationalities: Jews, Armenians, Poles, Germans. They have carefully preserved and still preserve both their own history and the history of representatives of different peoples. Tadeusz Dołęga-Mostowicz was considered one of the most famous and wealthiest writers in Poland in the 1930s, a journalist, novelist, and screenwriter. Even today, his books are regularly republished, enjoying commercial success, and his works are adapted for the screen, becoming masterpieces of cinema. His novel, The Quack, was filmed 3 times. The future writer was born on August 10, 1898, in Okoniwo, now Vitebsk region, Belarus, into a family of a lawyer and a teacher. From childhood, Tadeusz was interested in literature. He began writing poems and school play scripts early. Memories of childhood are reflected in many of his short stories. After graduating from high school in Vilnius in 1915, he entered the Faculty of Law at Kyiv University. Later, he joined the Polish military organization, Piłsudski's network. At the end of the First World War, Tadeusz Mostowicz interrupted his studies and through Finland and Sweden made his way to Warsaw, where he volunteered for the Polish army, serving until 1922. Afterwards, he began working with Poland's leading newspaper, Rzeczpospolita, as a crime reporter and proofreader, and from 1925 became a staff editor and columnist. It was there that his work, The Dream of Mrs. Tunka, was first published. From 1925, articles and feuilletons criticizing Piłsudski appeared in Poland's most popular newspaper. No government in the world likes criticism. To understand the events of that time, let us delve into history.
Ukrainian lands, Kievan Rus. After the flourishing and greatness of the 10th to 12th centuries, in 1199, the succession passed to Grand Prince Roman, one of the most influential politicians of 13th century Europe. In the 12th century, there were 3 main political forces in Europe: the Pope, the Emperor of the Byzantine Empire, and the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. The wife of Prince Roman and mother of King Danilo of Halich, Anna, was the daughter of the Byzantine Emperor Alexios III Angelos. Her sister was the wife of the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, Philip of Swabia, Philip Hohenstaufen. Undoubtedly, thanks to his dynastic ties and influential relatives across Europe, in addition to the Pope, Prince Roman was a very significant political figure. As Prince Roman's ancestor, Yaroslav the Wise, had bequeathed, whoever among his sons, according to seniority, ruled Kiev, ruled all of Rus. Fulfilling this testament, Prince Roman, and later his son, King Danilo of Halich, and the entire royal lineage placed their representatives in Kiev. Prince Roman built a temple near ancient Halich in honor of his grandfather Izyaslav, the eldest son of Vladimir Monomakh and grandson of Yaroslav the Wise. For 400 years, from 1349 to 1772, a large part of Ruses found itself within the borders of Poland. At that time, in 1721, Peter I appropriated the name Rus from the Ruthenians and renamed the Muscovite state Russia. 1772 is a date known to every Pole, the year of the first partition of Poland. This was followed by the second and the third partitions in 1795. Europe was divided between two empires, the Austrian and the Russian. Poland disappeared from the map of Europe for 123 years. For the Ruthenians, who later began to call themselves Ukrainians, the occupation of their native lands continued. They were divided by a border between two empires and, during the First World War, found themselves on opposite sides of the front. West of Ukraine was under the Austro-Hungarian Empire, while the east was under Russia. From that moment, the Ukrainian People's Republic became independent, free, and sovereign, the state of the Ukrainian people. And only on January 22nd, 1918, on the Day of Unity, did the Ukrainians truly unite. The Central Rada in Kiev adopted the Fourth Universal, which proclaimed the independence of the Ukrainian People's Republic.
Marshal Józef Piłsudski was for all Poles like a father who had won independence for Poland. In April 1919, Piłsudski transferred General Józef Haller's army to the Ukrainian front. The Entente had assigned this army exclusively for combat operations against the Bolsheviks. At first, Piłsudski supported the head of the Ukrainian People's Republic Directorate, Simon Petliura, but then betrayed the Ukrainians and signed a secret agreement with Lenin to aid the Bolsheviks. The details of this secret agreement were revealed by the chief of the Polish Army General Staff, General Tadeusz Dołęga-Mostowicz, after Piłsudski's death. Through this secret tactic of aiding the Bolsheviks, Piłsudski ensured that the Reds, the Muscovites, in turn defeated the active army of the Ukrainian People's Republic, and then Denikin's volunteer army. Poland's plan was to restore the borders of 1772. Piłsudski and his staff sought to establish full control over right-bank Ukraine, while reducing the UNR government to the status of a powerless satellite. Piłsudski's campaign in Ukraine failed. Moscow and Warsaw agreed to peace at the expense of dividing Ukraine and Belarus. The Second Polish Republic and the USSR, in the 20-year interwar period, reached an understanding with Germany. At the same time, while east of Ukraine was being destroyed by the Muscovites, who carried out genocide against Ukrainians, Red Terror, famines, Poland's internal policy on the west of Ukraine was aimed at harsh repression of Ukrainians. With the forces of the army and police, repressions were carried out against the Ukrainian people, designed to suppress the national liberation movement. Mostowicz criticized Piłsudski's government for its policies, the deceiving of the Polish people, and the so-called sanacja regime. This, of course, provoked outrage among many Poles. As a result of his active stance, on September 8, 1927, an assassination attempt was carried out against him. 7 armed men attacked him in the middle of the street. Knocked unconscious, he was taken to a forest. This attack on a journalist was condemned by all segments of Polish society. Mostowicz later used this event in his famous novel, The Quack. Unlike his protagonist, Warsaw surgeon Professor Rafał Wilczek, the writer did not lose his memory. From then on, he left journalism and devoted himself entirely to literature under the pseudonym Dołęga. His works had well-structured, suspenseful plots with unexpected, ingenious resolutions and became bestsellers. He worked daily, regularly, usually writing 2 novels per year, and his monthly income was huge. In his free time, he was passionate about cars and hunting. He was friends with Makosinski, Ossendowski, and Gombrowicz. A handsome and wealthy writer, a determined personality. Always surrounded by beautiful women, but he did not flaunt his love affairs publicly. From 1934, Tadeusz Mostowicz collaborated with the film industry as a screenwriter. Within 5 years, 8 of his 16 works had been adapted for the screen. His last book, The Diary of Mrs. Hanke, became a sensation. The novel, set in the environment of Warsaw's upper classes, reflected the real international situation of the late 1930s and contemplations about the coming war. In the night of September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded the Republic of Poland. The Second World War had begun. But even before this tragic chapter in history, both Nazi Germany and Soviet communists were interested in a great war in Europe. On August 23, 1939, the Soviet and German foreign ministers, Molotov and Ribbentrop, signed a non-aggression pact, the secret Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Germany agreed to Soviet occupation of Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Belarus, and west of Ukraine. The rest of Eastern Europe, according to the agreement, fell under Nazi Germany's influence. On September 17, 1939, violating the Soviet-Polish non-aggression treaty, the Soviet army invaded Poland. On that same day in Brest-Litovsk, now Brest, Belarus, a joint parade of Soviet and German troops was held to celebrate their victory over Poland. In 1939 to 1940, Stalin, following his agreement with Hitler, seized the Baltic states, Belarus, and west of Ukraine, while only Finland, after fierce resistance, managed to avoid occupation, though it lost part of its territory. Tadeusz Mostowicz, at the outbreak of the war, was mobilized as an officer to defend the Polish-Romanian border along the Cheremosh River in the town of Kuty. Germany's attack on Poland caught most of the population by surprise, including the state leadership. Finding himself in Kuty, Mostowicz organized a militia and supported the people. Amid the beauty of the Carpathian Mountains, in these tragic days, he remembered his love. In the summer of 1938, the writer fell in love, as he himself admitted, seriously. The chosen one of his heart was Kate Piwnicka. Their engagement was planned for November 1939, and the wedding for Christmas. Events unfolded rapidly. By force of circumstance, Kuty became the last symbolic capital of Poland. The final meeting of the government of the Second Polish Republic took place in Kuty on September 17th, in the residence of a Greek Catholic priest. A decision was made that military units should not engage in battle with the advancing Soviet army. The order was, all must retreat to Romania or Hungary. The entire government attended its last Mass at the Catholic Church of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. On the night of September 17th to 18th, the Polish government was forced to evacuate and crossed the border with Romania. Some demoralized Polish soldiers threw their weapons into the Cheremosh River and committed suicide. On September 20th, Kuty shook from Soviet tanks that blocked the general retreat of the Poles. Tadeusz Mostowicz gathered bread and ran after his Polish acquaintances who, terrified, fled with their children without food from the tanks. A Muscovite bullet killed the writer. Local residents, risking their lives, buried the body of the famous Polish writer in an unmarked grave in the local cemetery. For nearly 40 years, Ukrainians, the inhabitants of Kuty, secretly from the Soviet authorities, cared for the grave, trying through letters to reach high-ranking officials in Poland to inform them where Mostowicz had died. When we were filming this movie, we were touched by how elderly people pieced together what they had heard from their parents about Mostowicz's death. Only in 1978 did the Polish authorities give permission for the writer to be reburied at the Powązki Cemetery in Warsaw. Only in the 1960s did Poles learn where and how Mostowicz had died. In none of the sources is there mention of Ukrainians, Hutsuls, or the people of Kuty. It was they who, with respect and love, preserved and continue to preserve the memory of Tadeusz Mostowicz, whose work belongs not only to Polish, but also to world culture.